What a $50 weekly grocery budget really buys a Vietnamese family. I'm standing in the middle of the market, looking at what's left in my hand, about $6. Only 2 more stalls to go, fruit and the backup fund. And we still haven't run out of budget. 3 days earlier, I handed a family I know in Ho Chi Minh City exactly 1.3 million dong, about $50, with one question: would that be enough to feed everyone for a full week? And that week, everyone wasn't just 4 people, it was 5, because I stayed and ate with them the entire time. The answer is why I'm taking you back to the very beginning of this whole trip. Before we get into the market, let me set the scene. I was in Ho Chi Minh City for work, and instead of staying at a hotel, I asked to stay with a family my own family has known for years, a way to actually experience daily life, instead of just watching the city go by through a taxi window. The family I stayed with is a completely ordinary middle-class household, not rich, not poor, representative of millions of other Vietnamese families. The husband works as a factory worker, the wife runs the household and does some small trading on the side, and their 2 kids are in elementary and middle school. And for the week I stayed, I became the unofficial 5th person at their dinner table. While chatting with them, I learned their weekly grocery budget usually sits around 1 to 1.3 million dong, right around that $50 mark I wanted to test in this video. This wasn't a number picked to perform for a video, it's the actual budget a huge number of Vietnamese families operate on every week, quietly, without needing any complicated math. I asked if I could hand them that exact amount, accounting for me eating with them all week, and follow along to the market to see exactly what it turned into. They agreed, seeming just as curious as I was. What makes this budget so interesting to break down? In a lot of Western countries, $50 a week for 5 people is usually an enormous challenge. Barely enough for the most basic meals, let alone fresh vegetables, meat, or any real variety across 7 days. But in Vietnam, that same amount can produce a full week of nutritious, varied meals, and sometimes there's even a little left over. So what accounts for that difference? The answer starts right where we're about to walk in, the traditional market. Here's something I noticed on my very first night staying with them. Nobody in that family treated frugal spending as some kind of hardship. To them, it was just how life normally worked, the same way I treat paying for parking every day as something completely unremarkable. Choosing a traditional market over a supermarket turned out to be the most important turning point in this entire budget story, even though it sounds like a small decision. In Vietnam, there are basically 2 options for weekly grocery shopping: traditional wet markets, as foreigners often call them, and modern supermarkets. Prices between the 2 can differ significantly for the same items, depending on the product and timing, especially fresh produce and seafood, with wet markets usually coming out cheaper since they don't carry the overhead of rent, refrigeration, and multiple layers of distribution that supermarkets do. With a budget of 1.3 million dong for 5 people, choosing the market over the supermarket was practically a requirement to make it through 7 days without cutting portions. This is also why, even as modern supermarket chains keep expanding rapidly in big cities, traditional markets remain where most Vietnamese homemakers still do their daily shopping, not out of nostalgia, but simple budget math. And I noticed one more factor: the familiarity between the woman of the house and the regular vendors at the market, something a supermarket can never replicate. Every few stalls, there'd be a familiar greeting, a quick check-in about family before getting down to actually buying anything. Before I get into the specifics, I need to be upfront. The numbers below are a reasonable illustration of how the budget was allocated, based on typical market prices, not an exact receipt logging every single dong. Real prices can shift slightly depending on the day and the vendor. The vegetable stall, around $8.50. Our first stop was the vegetable stand. With roughly 220,000 dong, we picked up enough greens for most of the week. A bit more than usual since I was now eating with them. Water spinach, bok choy, pumpkin, tomatoes, scallions, and a few herbs. At traditional markets, vegetables are sold by the bunch or by weight, usually for the equivalent of a few cents to under $1 per type. Here's something I found interesting. We didn't buy a week's worth all at once and stuff it in the fridge. We only bought enough for 2 to 3 days, planning to come back to the market 2 or 3 more times that week. This is a common habit among Vietnamese homemakers, keeping vegetables fresh instead of storing them for long stretches, while also making spending easier to control in smaller batches. The meat and fish stall, around $16.50. This was the single biggest expense in the budget, roughly 420,000 dong, nearly a third of the entire week's spending. With that, we got about 1.2 kilograms of pork, a bit of chicken, and a couple of affordable fresh fish, like mackerel or basa. The strategy here was clear. Skip beef entirely, usually 2 to 3 times the price of pork, unless there's a special occasion, and prioritize whatever fish is currently in season. In-season fish is noticeably cheaper than out-of-season or imported seafood. One detail I found interesting: we bought a whole chicken instead of just breasts or thighs. By weight, a whole bird is always cheaper, and every part of it gets used, from the meat for soup, to the bones for stock, to the giblets stir-fried on the side. I noticed the wife deciding between mackerel and basa almost instantly, barely any hesitation at all. I later realized that wasn't carelessness. It was an entire price database built up in her head from hundreds of previous trips to this exact market. Rice and dry goods, around $10 Mars. Rice is the foundation of every Vietnamese meal, and this is basically a fixed weekly investment. Around 250,000 dong for a bag of rice that lasts well beyond just this 1 week. Plus other dry staples like beans, noodles, and basic condiments like fish sauce or cooking oil whenever they were running low. Rice in Vietnam stays relatively cheap and stable in price relative to average income, partly because Vietnam is one of the world's largest rice exporters, with a steady local supply right at hand. Eggs, tofu, and plant-based protein, around $4.50. With about 110,000 dong, we picked up a carton of 10 eggs and a few blocks of tofu. This became a critical backup protein source for the week. On days when the meat and fish budget was running thin, eggs and tofu stepped in as a cheap, quick, nutritious substitute. It's not unusual for Vietnamese families to build at least 2 or 3 meals a week around eggs or tofu as the main dish. Not because they're lesser ingredients, but because Vietnamese cooking treats both incredibly versatilely. Fried eggs, boiled eggs, egg and meat custard, tofu and tomato sauce, lemongrass fried tofu. Enough variation to never feel repetitive, even eating them often. Honestly, I ate more eggs that week than I probably do in an entire month back home, but never once got tired of them, because every day brought a different preparation. I started to understand why, in Vietnamese eyes, this was never framed as the cheap option. It's just a familiar, everyday ingredient. Fruit, around $6. With about 150,000 dong, we picked up seasonal fruit, bananas, oranges, guava, or papaya, depending on the time of year. Tropical fruit in Vietnam follows very distinct seasons, and prices swing significantly based on that. Buying in season can save quite a bit compared to buying out of season. The reserve fund, around $6 max. The remaining money was kept as a buffer for anything unexpected, a condiment running out, a small treat for the kids, or simply a cushion in case prices shifted slightly that week. And this is exactly the money I was holding in my hand at the start of this video, the moment we knew for certain the budget was going to hold up. So after a full week, what did that 1.3 million dong actually produce on the table for 5 people? A 7-day menu with at least 2 full meals a day, ranging across soups, stir-fries, braised dishes, and a rotation of animal and plant-based protein. No meal repeated exactly, thanks to how flexibly the ingredients got reused. The same vegetable stir-fried one day, in soup the next, boiled the day after, the same bit of meat braised, stir-fried, or turned into filling for something else. I ate with the family the entire week, and honestly, not a single meal ever felt like the budget version. Every meal came with soup, a main protein dish, and vegetables. Exactly what a normal Vietnamese family dinner looks like, even with one extra unplanned mouth to feed, mine. By the end of the week, there was usually still a little money left over, enough for one small, special meal over the weekend, something the kids liked. or simply carried over into the following week. The most notable part isn't that they survived a week on a tight budget, it's that the quality of the food was never compromised. These weren't sparse, nutritionally thin meals. They were full, varied Vietnamese family dinners by every traditional standard. Soup, a main dish, vegetables, and rice as the base. Compare that to a lot of Western countries, where $50 a week for 5 people usually forces serious cuts in either quality or variety, especially fresh meat and produce. And the story in Vietnam looks completely different. That gap comes down to a combination of factors: lower agricultural production costs, a shorter supply chain, straight from farmer to market, without layers of middlemen, and a home cooking culture that's still incredibly strong, squeezing maximum value out of every dong spent. This family's story isn't some rare exception. It's a fairly typical snapshot of what millions of Vietnamese households do every single week. And the real takeaway from this whole experience isn't simply everything in Vietnam is cheap. The real lesson is in how an entire food culture has been built around resourcefulness, avoiding waste, and squeezing full value out of every ingredient. A whole chicken used down to the bones, a bunch of greens prepared a dozen different ways, and a habit of shopping frequently instead of stockpiling, which makes budgeting so much easier to manage. What stuck with me most after that trip wasn't the 1.3 million dong figure. It was watching the whole family, now with me added to the table, sit down together every night without a single thought that this meal had been carefully calculated down to the last dong. That resourcefulness has become pure instinct, to the point where it no longer even registers as effort. If you're living on a tight budget yourself, wherever in the world you are, maybe the real thing worth taking from this isn't the $50 figure, it's the philosophy underneath it. Cook at home, buy what's in season, and never let an ingredient go to waste. Do you think your own family could live a week on a similar budget? Let me know in the comments. If this video made you curious about what everyday life actually looks like in Vietnam, wait for the next one, where I'll take you even deeper into parts of daily life most people never get to see. Subscribe, and I'll take you deeper into the real Vietnam, not the version you'd read in a book.